Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim, and these are the top stories on the continent. Al-Shabaab militants storm a military base in Somalia's south, the second time in 2 months. The group says it killed 27 soldiers, but the army has dismissed the claim. China and Rwanda signed over a dozen bilateral deals worth millions. Chinese President Xi Jinping continuing his policy of boosting investment in Africa. And Zimbabwe's tourism sector gets the kiss of life. After 20 years of political and economic turmoil, visitors are flocking back. First, al-Shabaab fighters have stormed a military base in southern Somalia, 40 kilometers north of the regional capital, Kismayo. The attackers detonated a suicide car bomb at a checkpoint before firing on the Bar Sanguni base. The al-Qaeda-linked extremists claimed in a statement they had killed 27 soldiers, but the Somali army has denied this, saying its troops had repelled the attack, with casualties inflicted on both sides. It's the second assault on the location in as many months. Well, for more, France 24's regional correspondent Julia Steers had this update.
Casualty numbers and general information is still fuzzy. As you said, both sides are providing different accounts of what happened. Al-Shabaab says that they killed 27 Somali National Army soldiers. The government and the army refute that claim. They say that they killed 87 militants in their fight to take back their base, and numbers from their end vary from 6 to 12 servicemen on their side possibly killed. We do know that the attack started very early this morning with 2 car bombs detonated near the base, and that heavy firefighting followed after that. Of course, the day ended with the Somali National Army remaining in control of their base. Now, this base, the Sanguni base, as you said, has been attacked just last month in June when al-Shabaab attacked the base, resulting in the death of 1 American soldier. 4 American soldiers were wounded in that attack, and the base is about 50 kilometers from the city of Kismayo, which is a critical port city in southern Somalia. It was held by al-Shabaab for a number of years, and while al-Shabaab in general is losing ground across the country, they do still have a stronghold near this base in the southern region of Somalia.
Now, as you're saying, al-Shabaab has been losing ground, but it still manages to carry out regular bombings.
Territorially, they're definitely losing ground. This can largely be credited to the presence of African Union troops across the country, to the commitment of this new government to combating this group, and to the uptick in drone strikes that we've seen under the Trump administration. But that said, they're still making an impact. They're certainly still making headlines. And that's largely because they've shifted away from their previous strategy of taking towns, of taking over entire regions. And now they're employing more insurgent-style strategies of car bombs, suicide bombers, and IEDs. Just this month in the capital of Mogadishu, we've seen several complex attacks that have involved car bombs. So they're certainly still making their presence known throughout the country. And there's a concern that as the African Union mission there begins to draw down in 2018 and going forward, that the group could shift back to their older strategies and perhaps regain some strength.
Next, Nigerian officials say that 7 people have been killed in a suicide attack on a mosque. It took place in Konduga town in the country's north. The suicide bomber pretended to join early morning prayers on Monday before detonating his explosives. The attack follows the arrests of some 22 Boko Haram extremists. The men are allegedly responsible for kidnapping the Chibok schoolgirls, as well as over 50 suicide bombings. More than 20,000 people have been killed during Boko Haram's 9-year insurgency. Rwanda and China have signed 15 deals to bring millions of dollars of investment to the East African nation. They include loans for road construction, hospital renovation, and the development of a new airport. President Paul Kagame called China's treatment of Africa as an equal, more precious than money. Rwanda's trade with China exceeded 130 million euros in 2017, making Beijing one of Kigali's largest trade partners. Over the weekend, Xi Jinping also visited Senegal to conclude a raft of trade accords. He'll end his African tour in Johannesburg for the BRICS summit. Here's President Xi speaking earlier.
I am here this time with the aim to consolidate the traditional friendship between China and Rwanda and to work together with Mr. President to plan for the future of our bilateral relations. China would like to dovetail its development with that of Africa for win-win cooperation and common development.
Now in Chad, more and more young women are leaving rural areas to become domestic workers in the city. In the capital, N'Djamena, some 80,000 people in the city of 2 million are servants. Working conditions are harsh and they're often abused by their employers. France 24's Nicolas Germain has this report.
These very young women work as housemaids in the richest districts of the capital, N'Djamena. Clémentine is one of them. She showed us the small room she rents with 7 other girls. She's 16 and already has 1 child. Clémentine earns 48 euros a month.
I have come here to work, to make some money. Then I send it to my family in the village, so they can buy some cows. Then they can plough the land.
When the camera is off, she mentions cases of housemaids who are abused by their employers. It's something that is confirmed by this researcher. The UN estimates there are 80,000 domestic workers in N'Djamena, a city of 2 million inhabitants.
When the girls go to their workplace, they are sometimes abused by their employers. And sometimes they are abused on their way there, on the road. That's why they often spend the week at their employers.
Most domestic workers have fled poverty in southern Chad.
Because the youth don't earn enough money as farmers, they have to leave their villages. And secondly, there are what I call mirages, the bright lights of the town that attract the youth in the rural areas.
Conflicts between herders and farmers and the lack of available land are other factors pushing young people like Clémentine to leave their village. But very often, they are not aware of the harsh living conditions that await them in the capital.
Now, after nearly 2 decades of decline, Zimbabwe's tourism sector is enjoying something of a renaissance. Visitors are returning in droves to see the majestic Victoria Falls and explore unspoilt safari reserves. Political and economic turmoil under longtime ruler Robert Mugabe had ruined the sector, but since his ouster, authorities say tourism is making a comeback.
This is Zimbabwe, and after almost 20 years in the doldrums, its tourism industry is being revived. Foreign visitors to the country's flagship tourist resort, the Victoria Falls, jumped nearly 50% in the first quarter of 2018.
We chose Zimbabwe because of Victoria Falls. I gotta tell you, we've never been to Africa and we're falling in love with Africa. So.
Political and economic instability scared tourists away for years. But after a de facto military coup at the end of 2017, longtime President Robert Mugabe was removed and an industry responsible for 10% of Zimbabwe's GDP reopened almost overnight.
I think we were in a closed period. For a long time, we closed ourselves in. The doors were locked. It is a key pillar to our economy and a low-hanging fruit. We just have to get our act together. Yes. And it has never
Even though it's too early to say exactly what the national increase for 2018 will be, the minister believes tourism could become the #1 contributor to Zimbabwe's economy, something local businesses are getting excited about.
The bottom line is we want to see more tourists, we want more people to come to Zimbabwe. Hopefully we'll have more investors coming in to build more hotels, bigger hotels and other facilities.
And this seems to be exactly what is happening. New hotels and a new airport have recently been built close to Victoria Falls, and accommodation in the area is often fully booked. Whether regional or from further abroad, tourists are coming back, and Zimbabwe appears to truly be open for business.
Well, things are also taking off for Somaliland's literature and art scene. Its 6-day annual book fair opened over the weekend and runs until Thursday. The event was launched in 2008 with a few dozen books and just 200 visitors. 10 years later, it's gained an international following, attracting thousands. Somaliland is still not officially recognized as a nation after it broke away from Somalia in 1991. For centuries, the Somali tradition has been preserved orally through poems and songs. Now the focus has shifted to the written word as a unifying force. particularly among the younger generation.
We are here to encourage young people and tell them the value of writing, whether it's a book, poetry, or things related to art.
I wrote this book because I saw that my peers were not interested in culture. Instead, they see it as something that is not important. Therefore, their Somali identity is in danger.
We forget who we are, we forget art, culture, music. You know, Somalis used to have in 40s and 50s and 60s one of the best music, African music scene that we have. Today, maybe young people have no clue idea what Somali music is.
Well, that's all for this edition of Eye on Africa. More news coming up ahead here on France 24. Stay tuned.
Revisited, presented by Stuart Norval.
After 20 years of conflict in which 70,000 people died, the Shining Path is a painful subject in Peru. It's 50 years since the armed revolutionary movement was created and 25 since the arrest of its founder. So how strong is the movement today? Are its members still nostalgic for the Maoist period? And what of the families of the thousands of missing victims?
Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.